The network had no center. It had no name spoken aloud, no physical address, no single server that could be raided in the dead of night. To the 22-year-old Iranian Quds Force operative smuggling surface-to-air missiles into Yemen, it was simply the channel. To the North Korean financier laundering $100 million in stolen crypto from a Macau casino high-rise, it was the service. To the handful of intelligence agencies who knew something existed, a dark spot in their global surveillance dragnet, it was Tenebris. Tenebris was a decentralized, end-to-end encrypted, quantum-resistant mesh network. It was a digital ghost, a masterpiece of cryptographic architecture. It didn't just hide data. It made data cease to exist as a discernible pattern. Its traffic looked like the random, chaotic noise of the internet itself. A stray packet from a weather app in Ohio, a fragment of a streaming movie in Tokyo, a meaningless data ping from a smart fridge in Berlin. Tenebris was a cathedral of shadows, and its architect was a high priest known only as Cygnus. In a geothermal-powered chalet, perched on a black volcanic rock field outside Reykjavik, Julian Hess watched the snow fall. He was 29 years old, pale, and possessed of a quiet, unnerving stillness. He was Cygnus. He was also, by every quantifiable metric, the world's smartest hacker. He wasn't a criminal, not in his own mind. He was a philosopher, a cypherpunk absolutist. He had built Tenebris not for profit, but from a place of pure, white-hot ideology. He believed in one thing. The state, any state, was an entity of inherent coercion, and its primary tool of control was surveillance. Tenebris was his gift to the world, a place where human thought could be free from the prying eyes of governments. It was a shield for the dissident, the journalist, the oppressed, but a shield has no conscience. It cannot choose who holds it. On the 14th floor of the Glilo Junction Midrasha, the training and operations academy for Mossad, Eitan, the head of Caesarea, the agency's operational division, stared at a screen. On it were 3 photographs: a dead scientist in Tehran, a missed arms shipment in the Red Sea, a bombed-out safe house in Damascus. "This is what Tenebris means," Eitan said, his voice a low gravel. The room was dark, save for the glow of the screen. "It is the logistical backbone for every one of our enemies. Hezbollah, Iran, Hamas. They plan, they pay, and they move. And we are blind. Completely. We don't just have a gap in intelligence. We are in a black hole." He turned to the 2 other people in the room. Naomi, a Unit 8200 liaison, a digital native who saw code as poetry, and Kobe, a Katsa, a field intelligence officer. Kobe looked more like a history professor than a spy, but his specialty was not technology, it was people. "Naomi," Eitan said, "can we break it?" Naomi pushed her glasses up. "Respectfully, Eitan, breaking Tenebris is like trying to break the concept of multiplication. It's not a thing. It's a mathematical reality. It's decentralized across thousands of nodes. The encryption is flawless. It's beautiful in a terrifying way. We cannot penetrate Tenebris. Then we go after the man," Eitan said, his gaze settling on Kobe. "We can't find him. He's a ghost." "No," Kobe said softly, leaning forward. He hadn't spoken yet. "He's not a ghost. Ghosts don't have motives. This man has a philosophy, and anyone with a philosophy can be broken. We don't need to break his encryption. We need to break his faith." The hunt for Cygnus was not a hunt for a person. It was a hunt for a signature, an idea. Unit 8200, Israel's formidable cyber intelligence corps, had spent 2 years throwing every zero-day exploit and brute force attack they had at Tenebris. The network didn't just repel them, it seemed to learn, rerouting and healing itself before the analysts could even understand the architecture. They were fighting a digital hydra. Kobe moved his team from the server rooms to the libraries. "Stop looking at the what," he ordered the Joint Task Force. "Look at the why. Who builds this? Not a nihilist, not a mercenary, a priest, a true believer. He's not in it for money." Naomi's team confirmed it. The core wallet for Tenebris, which collected microscopic fees for node maintenance, held millions in untraceable crypto, and it sat untouched. Except for one transaction. 3 years ago, a single encrypted donation of 1.138 Bitcoin. It was the thread. The recipient was not a dark web entity. It was a defunct online journal, the Berlin Journal of Postmodern Anarchism. Kobe's team pulled the subscriber lists, the forum posts, the archived chat logs from the late 2000s. They were looking for a tone, a specific flavor of intellectual arrogance and digital purity. They found him in a 2011 chat log, a user named Cygnus arguing with a professor about the tyranny of centralized architecture. The user's arguments were not just passionate, they were mathematically brilliant, citing proofs and algorithms that were, at the time, purely theoretical. From there, the breadcrumbs led to a name, Julian Hess. He was a ghost, a Berlin-born prodigy. Enrolled in the Freie Universität Berlin at 15, published a paper on decentralized network theory at 17 that was dismissed by his professors as utopian nonsense. At 19, he vanished. No bank accounts, no passport, no digital footprint. He's living off the grid, Naomi said, but he can't have been born that way. Kobe put his human team on the ground in Berlin. They didn't look for Julian, they looked for his past. They found a relative, a nervous cousin who worked at a university. A Syanim, a Jewish volunteer who assists Mossad abroad, made the approach. A casual coffee, a mention of an old family friend. The cousin provided the key, not a password, but a trauma. Julian hadn't just vanished. He had been erased by a tragedy. He had a sister, Ilara Hess. She was an activist, an organizer, a believer in street-level protest. In 2010, she was part of a demonstration against government data retention policies. The police, using digital surveillance, rounded up the organizers. Ilara was arrested. She died in a holding cell. Internal bleeding, the report said. Complications from a fall. It was a lie. She had been beaten. This is the axiom, Kobe told Eitan back in Tel Aviv. He held up a photo of a smiling, defiant young woman with paint on her face. Ilara Hess. This is the operating system for Julian's mind. He didn't build Tenebris to help Hezbollah. He built it to protect her. He sees Tenebris as a shield, Kobe explained, his eyes intense. It's a digital sanctuary for activists, for the Ilara Hesses of the world, to protect them from the surveillance state that killed his sister. He's protecting terrorists, Kobe. I don't care about his feelings, Eitan countered. You must, Kobe replied. His feelings are the only vulnerability he has. He built a shield. To make him destroy it, we have to convince him that he built a sword. We must use Tenebris to commit an atrocity so profound, so deeply offensive to his core ideology, that he is forced to burn his own temple to the ground. A silence filled the room. Naomi looked pale. Operation Digital Samson, Eitan said, giving it a name. Bring the temple down. The plan was a masterwork of psychological deception. It would require 3 distinct elements. First, they needed a victim, a group that Julian Hess would ideologically support, a group that was Ilara Hess. Naomi's team scoured the Tenebris user logs. It was difficult. The network was designed to prevent this. But they found a cluster of nodes in Erbil, northern Iraq. A small grassroots Kurdish aid organization called the Zagros Collective. They were using Tenebris for its intended purpose, to coordinate medical supply deliveries and refugee movements, hiding their roots from both Turkish-backed militias and Iranian intelligence. They were the perfect innocent. Julian, if he ever monitored his network, would see them as his ideal users. Second, they needed a monster, a group so vile, so antithetical to Julian's ideals that their very presence on Tenebris would be a stain. We can't use a real group, Kobe said. We can't risk them going rogue, and we can't risk Julian already having a prejudice for them. We have to build one. This was a job for Mishtulim, Mossad's deep cover operatives, those who are assimilated. They wouldn't just pose as extremists, they would become them. They created the Pure Path, a fictional, ultra-nationalist, neo-fascist terror cell based in Eastern Europe. Their ideology was a toxic soup of racial purity, anti-globalism, and Luddite fanaticism. They were, in short, digital Nazis. A team of Mishtulim established a presence in the real world. A safe house in rural Bulgaria, a few low-level arms purchases. Then they discovered Tenebris. From his chalet in Iceland, Julian Hess saw the Pure Path's nodes light up. He frowned. He monitored their initial communications. It was hateful, violent rhetoric, but his non-interference policy was absolute. All speech must be free from the state, even speech he despised. To censor them would be to become the state. He let them stay. Third, and most crucial, they needed the weapon. This was Naomi's part. They couldn't hack Tenebris, but they could exploit the real world. They needed a man in the middle, not on the network, but on the hardware. A team from Caesarea was activated. Their target, the main internet exchange for the Kurdish region in Iraq. It was a high-risk operation involving a compromised ISP technician and a 2 a.m. maintenance window. While a fake firefight distracted the local security, the team installed a hardware intercept. They were not touching Tenebris. They were touching the data before it entered the Tenebris network. "We are in," Naomi reported, her voice flat with tension. "We control the Zagros Collective's pipe. Kobe, the trap is set." "Good," Kobe said. "Now, we teach the monster how to hunt." The operation began not with a bang, but with a whisper. Phase 1, the corruption of innocence. The Zagros Collective, the Kurdish aid group, continued their work, unaware that they were now puppets. They would send a message on Tenebris, requesting 500 units of broad-spectrum antibiotics and 1,000 units of sterile gauze for the Duhok camp. Before that message hit the Tenebris encryption layer, Naomi's intercept would catch it. Her team would algorithmically alter it. The message Julian Hess would see, if he looked, was requesting 500 kilos of ammonium nitrate and 1,000 detonator assemblies for the Duhok camp. They did this for weeks, meticulously. Medical volunteers became mercenary specialists. Water purification tablets became chlorine gas precursors. Blankets and tents became Kevlar plating and small arms. From the sterile remove of his Icelandic sanctuary, Julian watched in growing horror. The Zagros Collective, his ideal users, were in fact a sophisticated, heavily armed terror group masquerading as humanitarians. He checked their logs. He ran his own diagnostics. The encryption was sound. The data was real. His shield, his beautiful, pure creation, was being used to coordinate chemical attacks. He felt a cold sickness rise in his chest. He was protecting monsters. Phase 2, the righteous monster. Now it was Kobe's turn. He greenlit the Pure Path. His Mossad-run fascists. The Mishtulim team leader, Gideon, began a new stream of communication on Tenebris. His messages, also monitored by Julian, took on a new tone. "We have been watching the Zagros Collective chatter," Gideon wrote to his fictional cell. "These migrants are not victims. They are an invading army. They are acquiring chemical weapons. They plan to poison the wells of the local villages." Kobe was creating a perfect mirror of deception. He was feeding Julian's own shock back to him, through the voice of a neo-Nazi. "The world's governments are too weak to stop them," Gideon continued, his rhetoric escalating. "They hide behind this network, this Tenebris. But we see them. We will not stand by. We will be the hand of justice. We will strike them at their source." Julian was now trapped in a cognitive nightmare. He was watching a fascist terror group, the Pure Path, plan a righteous preemptive strike against a different terror group, the Zagros Collective, who were planning a fabricated chemical attack. His network, built to protect the innocent, had become a breeding ground for two different kinds of evil. The fascists were hateful, but were they wrong? The humanitarians were monsters. He was paralyzed. His absolutist ideology had no answer for this. If he shut down the Pure Path, he would be allowing the Zagros chemical attack to proceed. If he shut down the Zagros Collective, he would be helping the fascists. He did the only thing his philosophy allowed. Nothing. He was a passive observer, a god watching his creation rot. And Kobe, watching Julian's passive monitoring logs from Tel Aviv, knew he had him. "He's locked," Kobe murmured. "He's frozen. Now, we give him the atrocity." This was the most dangerous part of the operation. It involved a level of risk that made Eitan sweat, but Kobe insisted it was necessary. They needed to move from the digital to the physical. They had to make the fabricated conflict real. The plan had a new code name, an internal one, separate from Digital Samson. They called it Ararat, after the mountain where the Ark rested. This would be the flood. The Mishtulim team, the Pure Path, had been broadcasting their intent to stop the Zagros Collective. Now they had to act. A second Mossad team, this one from Kaidan, the spear tip unit specializing in assassinations and direct action, was secretly inserted into the same region of northern Iraq. They were not playing fascists. They were disguised as the Kurdish aid workers from the Zagros Collective. The plan was a cinematic masterpiece of deception. The Kaidan team, dressed as Kurds, loaded a convoy of trucks with boxes. These boxes were stenciled with UNICEF and Red Crescent. They were in reality filled with nothing but sacks of fertilizer and medical plaster, materials that would look incriminating in a fiery explosion but were essentially harmless. The Mishtulim team, the Pure Path, then intercepted this convoy on a remote mountain road. The entire event was filmed, not by one camera, but by three. Two were body cams worn by the Mishtulim operatives, giving it a chaotic, Call of Duty feel. The third was a high-altitude drone, providing cold thermographic oversight. The firefight was a piece of brutal staged choreography. The Kaidan team, as Kurds, fired back with blanks, then surrendered. Then came the part that Kobe had scripted. Gideon, the Mishtulim leader, walked up to the captured Kaidan operatives. He delivered a speech in heavily accented English directly to his body cam. "We found them," he yelled over the sound of the wind. "The humanitarians! Look!" He kicked open a box, showing the bags of chemicals. They were moving it to the camps, to poison the children. He turned to the kneeling Kaidan operatives. "You use this network of shadows, Tenebris, to hide your sins. But we see you. We are the pure. We are the path." He then executed all of them, one by one. The body cam footage was sickening, intimate, and utterly convincing. The Mishtulim team then planted high explosive charges on the trucks and detonated them, creating a massive fireball that would serve as the proof of the destroyed chemical convoy. The team exfiltrated. The operation was complete. But the true weapon wasn't the footage. It was the delivery. Back in their Bulgarian safe house, the Mishtulim team did not upload their victory video to YouTube or LiveLeak. They uploaded it in 3 massive encrypted files to a private file-sharing locker inside the Tenebris network. It was a trophy, a message to their supporters on the network. From his chalet in Iceland, Julian Hess saw the file transfer. He saw the file names: Judgment at Zagros, 1 Nordant MP4. Proof of Poison MP4. Thermal Cleans Movie. His blood ran cold. He pulled the files. He decrypted them. His hands were shaking so badly he mistyped his own password. He watched. He saw the ambush. He saw the UNICEF boxes. He saw the bags of ammonium nitrate. He heard the speech. He heard the name of his network, Tenebris, spoken as a justification for mass murder. And then he watched the executions. He watched the men he believed were monsters, the Kurds, being slaughtered by other monsters, the fascists. He vomited. He fell from his chair, gasping, the images seared into his brain. He had built a platform for freedom. He had built it to honor his dead sister, Ilara, and he had just watched it being used as the primary tool to facilitate a fascist death squad's execution of a supposed chemical terror cell. His entire moral universe collapsed. The shield wasn't a shield, it was a petri dish. It was an accelerant, it was a weapon, and all the blood. It was on his hands. He ran to his terminal. He had to know. He ran diagnostics on the Zagros Collective's nodes. They were dark, offline, dead. Naomi's team on Q had severed the hardware link, perfectly mimicking a team going permanently offline after being killed. He looked at the Pure Path's nodes. They were online, celebrating, praising Tenebris for exposing the truth and connecting the patriots. This was his legacy. Not Ilara's freedom, but Gideon's justice. He sat for a full hour, the only sound in the room his own ragged breathing and the hum of the geothermal generator. Then a new resolve settled over him. A cold, hard, terrible clarity. There was only one way to atone. There was only one way to stop the monsters. He couldn't just shut them down. He had to burn the whole thing. He had to destroy his cathedral. Tenebris was designed to be immortal. Julian Hess had built it to withstand the coordinated assault of the world's superpowers. He knew the NSA, the GCHQ, and Russia's SVR would one day try to kill it. He had built in redundancies, fail-safes, and self-healing algorithms. Killing Tenebris from the outside was impossible. But he had, in a fit of godlike hubris, given himself a backdoor, a suicide pill for his own creation. He called it the Alara key. It was not a simple command. It was a complex, multi-stage cryptographic sequence, a dead man's switch that, if activated, would initiate a cascading failure across the entire network. It would not just erase data, it would corrupt it. It would force every node to see every other node as a hostile threat. It would trigger a network-wide autoimmune disease. The Alara key would burn the master encryption keys, then issue a search and destroy command for all data backups, then finally send a self-destruct packet to the core code repository, turning his masterpiece into meaningless digital static. It was designed as a final "fuck you" to a state-level actor who might have captured him and was forcing him to decrypt the network. He would rather destroy it than let them have it. The irony was acidic. He was now the enemy. He was the one who had to be stopped. In Tel Aviv, on Naomi's screen, a single hidden alert lit up. It was an alert she had never expected to see. A tripwire they had planted in a public-facing code library that Julian Hess had once contributed to, years before Tenebris. It wasn't in Tenebris itself, but it was in a tool he might use to access Tenebris. "Kobe," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He's in. He's accessing the root command." "Is he shutting down the fascists?" Kobe asked. "No," Naomi said, her eyes wide. "He's authenticating the Alara key. He's initiating the Samson protocol." Aiton stood behind her. "He's doing it. The crazy bastard is really doing it. He's going to kill it himself." Kobe felt no triumph, only a profound, cold weight. He watched the screen, a visualization of the Tenebris network, a galaxy of interconnected lights. "It's starting," Naomi said. From his terminal in Iceland, Julian Hess began. He authenticated the first sequence, a 256-character string. Ilara Hess 1988, Invalidate Protocol, Sigma. In Tehran, a Quds Force general was coordinating a drone strike on a Saudi oil field. His encrypted laptop connected to Tenebris suddenly flashed. Fatal error, key mismatch. His connection was severed. The drone flew on, dumb. Julian entered the second sequence, a biometric scan of his own hand, then his retina. Authorize cascade, failure, event, Omega. In a Hezbollah bunker in Beirut's southern suburbs, a commander was receiving final coordinates for an attack. His messages turned to gibberish. Error, packet corrupted. He threw the tablet against the wall, screaming at his technicians. They were blind. Julian entered the third and final sequence. It wasn't a command, it was a word. Ilara. This was the burn order, the key that told the network to devour itself. Across the globe, the Tenebris network began to tear itself apart. It was not a quiet death. It was a violent digital auto-decapitation. Node 44A, Berlin, identified Node 112T, Singapore, as a state-level threat and firewalled it. Node 81B, Beirut, received a corrupted data packet from Node 22C, Caracas, and permanently banned its IP. Algorithms designed to heal the network were now shredding it. Data backups, stored in thousands of tiny fragments, were issued overwrite commands, replacing gigabytes of terrorist logistics with randomized static. In the Mossad war room, the galaxy of lights on Naomi's screen began to blink out, one by one, then in clusters, then in whole continents. Europe is dark, Naomi reported. Middle East is dark. Asia is dark. The world's most secure, most dangerous, most revolutionary communication network was committing suicide. Julian Hess watched the logs scroll by. Node offline. Node offline. Node offline. Each line was a nail in the coffin of his life's work, his monument to his sister. He was destroying her memory to save it. When the last light went out, he was left with a blank terminal. The tenebrous network was gone. The channel was silent. He unplugged the server stack. He unplugged his terminals. He carried the hard drives, the physical repositories of his genius, out into the Icelandic snow. He placed them in a steel barrel, poured gasoline over them, and dropped a match. He watched the black smoke rise against the gray sky, a funeral pyre for a ghost. The psychological operation, the matara in Hebrew, was complete, but Kobe's work was not. 2 days later, a Katsa team moved in on the chalet in Iceland. They were not keyed on. They were not there to kill. They were a retrieval team. They found Julian Hess sitting in his living room, staring at a blank wall. The house was cold, the generator was off. He hadn't eaten. He was a shell. He offered no resistance. He seemed to have been expecting them, or perhaps he no longer cared who came for him. They flew him, blindfolded and sedated, on a non-commercial flight to a secure facility outside Tel Aviv. It was not a prison. It was a villa, a comfortable, monitored safe house. Julian was placed in a room. It was not an interrogation cell. It was a library, warm, carpeted, with a comfortable chair and one wall that was a one-way mirror. Kobe entered, not as a captor, but as a therapist. He brought coffee. Julian, gaunt and hollow-eyed, just stared at him. "Who are you?" Julian whispered. "My name is Kobe," he said, sitting. "I'm the man who showed you the Pure Path video." Julian's eyes focused, a flicker of something, not anger, not yet, confusion. "You?" "The Zagros Collective," Kobe said. "The chemical weapons, the UNICEF boxes, the Pure Path fascists, the execution on the mountain road. It was all us." Julian just stared. He was trying to process the words. "The Kurds were our operatives," Kobe continued, his voice calm, almost gentle. "The fascists were our operatives. The chemical orders were our forgeries. The execution was stagecraft. Very good stagecraft." Julian's face was stone. He was rebooting his entire reality. "Why?" Julian finally choked out. "Because Tenebris was too good," Kobe said. "It was blinding us. It was allowing men who are real monsters, the Quds Force, Hezbollah, to move weapons and kill people, real people. We couldn't break your network, Julian. It was a masterpiece, truly. Only the man who built it could destroy it. So you made me," Julian said, the words catching in his throat. "We didn't make you do anything, Julian," Kobe said, leaning forward, his voice dropping. "That's the important part. We didn't hack your system. We hacked you. We created a moral quandary, an ethical trolley problem, that your rigid, absolutist ideology could not solve. You believe in total freedom of information. You believe the state is the enemy. We presented you with a scenario where your free users were a fascist death squad and a chemical terror cell. And the only state was, well, it was us staying out of it." Julian was shaking. You framed those Kurds." "No," Kobe said. "We framed you. We used your own network to show you the reflection of your own philosophy. And you were so horrified by what you saw. You smashed the mirror." Kobe stood up. "You built a shield, Julian. But in the real world, shields are used to hide behind while you sharpen a sword. Your sister, Alara, she died fighting a state that abused its power. You built a system that gave everyone that power, and it terrified you. As it should have." Julian Hess put his face in his hands and, for the first time since his sister died, he wept. A broken, shuddering animal sound. Julian Hess was never seen again. He does not exist. His name is not on any terror watch list or in any prison manifest. He is a ghost, captured by other ghosts. To the world, Tenebris simply stopped. In the dark corners of the web, theories abound. Some say Cygnus was captured by the NSA. Some say he was paid off by the Chinese. Some say he simply retired, a digital god ascending to a new plane. The truth is more complex. Julian is still in the villa. He is the most valuable asset Mossad has ever acquired. He is not a prisoner, not really. He is a consultant. He is a man who has seen the logical endpoint of his own purity and has, in its destruction, found a new, more complicated purpose. He no longer builds shields for the world. He builds swords for the state of Israel. His old ideology is gone, burned away in the Icelandic snow. It has been replaced by a cold, pragmatic cynicism. He now works for Kobe. He breaks networks, not builds them. He finds other Cygnuses, other brilliant, idealistic young men who think they can change the world with code, and he shows Mossad how to break their faith. He is, in short, a monster, but he is their monster. In the Midrasha, the file for Operation Digital Samson is sealed. It is considered one of the most successful and most ethically complex operations in the agency's history. They did not fire a single bullet. They did not launch a single cyber attack. They simply told a story. Naomi, the 8200 analyst, took a leave of absence. She found the operation too successful. She now teaches cryptography at the Technion, Israel's Institute of Technology. She warns her students, do not build gods. They always turn on their makers. Eitan was promoted. He sees the operation as a template. The future of warfare is psychological, not physical. Kobe still visits Julian. They play chess. They discuss philosophy. Kobe is the only person on Earth who understands the profound weight of what Julian did. He understands the sacrifice. We're not so different, Julian told him once, moving a pawn. You build narratives to control people. I used to build them to free people. We both failed. No, Julian, Kobe replied, looking not at the board but at the man. You didn't fail. You evolved. The power vacuum left by Tenebris was immediate and chaotic. Terrorist cells, suddenly deaf and dumb, reverted to analog methods. Dead drops, coded messages in newspapers, couriers. They were clumsy. They were slow. They were visible. In the 6 months following the shutdown, Israeli intelligence, guided by Julian's residual knowledge of his own network's archives, rolled up 3 major Hezbollah cells, intercepted a North Korean weapons shipment to Syria, and captured a key Iranian financier in Dubai. The ghosts that had been haunting Mossad were suddenly exposed. But the victory was not clean. It left a scar. In the digital underground, the Tenebris event became a legend. It was a digital Day of the Dead. Hackers and cypherpunks spoke of it in hushed tones. They analyzed the Ilara key cascade. They saw the autoimmune code. They realized with a shared collective dread that Cygnus had not been hacked. He had not been raided. He had done it to himself. This was Kobe's masterstroke. The true genius of Operation Digital Samson was not just the destruction of the network. It was the destruction of the idea behind it. He had not just killed Tenebris. He had poisoned the well for any network that would come after it. He had proved that a system built on pure, absolutist freedom would inevitably be consumed by the very monsters it sought to protect. Every new Cygnus, every new brilliant young coder dreaming of a decentralized, free internet would now have to contend with the ghost of Julian Hess. They would have to ask themselves, what if I'm not building a shield? What if I'm building a sword for fascists? The doubt, the hesitation, that was the true victory. Julian Hess, now clean-shaven and wearing the simple button-down shirts Kobe provided, sat at a terminal. He was no longer Julian. He was, for internal Mossad purposes, Analyst Aleph. He was tracking a new, nascent network rising out of Eastern Europe. It was small, but it was clever. It used some of his own early principles. It's good, he said, Kobe standing behind him. The architect is smart. He's an idealist. He believes he's protecting dissidents in Belarus. Is he? Kobe asked. Yes, Julian said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. But he's also protecting a human trafficking ring. They're using his free network to sell children. Can you show him? Kobe asked. Julian paused. He looked at the reflection of his own face in the dark screen. No, I can't show him, but I can make him watch. The end of this story is not a bomb or a car chase or a political treaty. It is a man in a quiet room, drinking coffee, looking at a wall. Kobe often thinks about the why. Why did Julian do it? The video was fake. The threat was a mirage. A lesser man, a different man, would have seen the flaws, would have doubted, would have found a third option. But Julian Hess was not a different man. He was the world's smartest hacker, and Kobe had used that intelligence against him. Julian's brilliance was his flaw. He was a man of pure, unbending logic, of mathematical axioms. Kobe had simply presented him with a new, terrible axiom. If Tenebris exists, atrocities will be committed in its name. If atrocities are committed in its name, Alara's memory is dishonored. Therefore, to honor Alara, Tenebris must not exist. It was a perfect, closed, logical loop, a syllogism of the soul. Mossad had made him destroy his network not by force, but by providing him with a logical proof that demanded only one catastrophic solution. The operation was a triumph of intelligence, but a tragedy of the human spirit. Kobe had weaponized a man's love for his dead sister. He had taken the purest, most idealistic motive, the protection of the innocent, and turned it into the lever for its own destruction. He had proved, in the end, that a system built by a man could be destroyed by a man, and that a man, no matter how smart, no matter how isolated, is never free from the world he is trying to hide from. In the villa, Julian, analyst Aleph, works. He is the ghost in Mossad's machine, a silent, brilliant, broken architect. He is the man who saw the true face of his creation and chose to burn it, and himself, rather than live with the reflection. He did not die in the temple like Samson. He was forced to become its janitor, sweeping up the ashes of his own revolution forever.